5 people in the world understand money. The rest, they just write about it. The British Empire once discovered that the fastest way to get more cobras was to pay people to kill them. They had offered a bounty for every dead snake in colonial India. A reasonable intervention on the face of it, the kind that looks sensible in a committee room, but catastrophic in a field. The locals, the cunning locals, who'd been watching confident men mismanage things for some time, they saw this well-formed argument, this incentive. They saw it immediately and started breeding cobras. And inevitably, when the time came and the British, they cancelled the programme, the breeders, they released their inventory back into the wild. And India ended the exercise with considerably more cobras than it had started with. Declare that a thing has value, and the world reorganizes to manufacture that thing until the declaration itself becomes absurd. This indeed is another example of the law of unintended consequences. And the people who've never understood this, those people, they keep designing monetary policy regardless. And there are rather more of them than you and I would hope. Monetary reform, it's where the mechanism shows up cleanest. Fiat currency, really, it's a covenant that gets quietly rewritten every decade. Purchasing power going on a long, slow walk to oblivion, a direction that no one pre-approved. Some yell, proclaim, agitate that we should peg the fiat to gold or Bitcoin. Something finite, something that committees of central banks can't conjure up, something that they can't conjure up out of thin air at 2 a.m. The problem is that what? It's collateralizing money against a scarce asset. Of course, it doesn't abolish the human incentive to game the system. No, it moves the snake farm. The reformists, they're still more interesting than the people who goddamn manage the current monetary system. Those are the ones who've decided that the really effective trick is the status quo, to keep rewriting the covenant quietly and hope nobody reads the small print until they're out of the building. Out of the building, what does that mean? Until they're dead, perhaps. But that covenant has been written large at the grocery counter when you check out. Now, there are perhaps 5 people alive today who understand why both groups end up in exactly the same place. And what they understand is this: the mechanism, it precedes the politics every time. incentives, gaming, human beings, problem. Let's run it through the British white-collar economy. And let's think of the Cobra as software. Software, or the singularity of AI. And the breeding program, well, that was called financial services, something the United Kingdom built its post-industrial identity on. Knowledge work, not manufacturing work. It's a dignified name for reading something and producing a document about it under a deadline. And of course, you don't need me to tell you, but large language models can do this for essentially nothing. And the evidence of the damage that will wreak has been accumulating. Only last week, HSBC made it concrete. It's not a it is a UB40 song, 1 in 10. But 1 in 10 of the HSBC, of its most senior bankers, have been eliminated in a single year. 134 of what regulators call material risk takers, the people whose trading and deal making can make or break the bank. A bank that spent $70 million in severance and shut down its mergers and acquisitions and equity capital markets teams across the UK, Europe, and the United States. Not because those businesses failed, but because a simpler, leaner organization no longer needs the headcount that built those desks. Reports now put 20,000 additional HSBC employees, roughly another 10% of the total global workforce, at risk from the AI. It's the first wave of a deployment cycle that doesn't stop at HSBC. Scale that experience across an economy where most workers are in sectors that software can replicate. And my friends, the arithmetic is brutal. An enterprise rolls out AI and 6 months later, something like 10% of the workforce has quietly evaporated. No announcement. The headcount, it just stops and then it contracts while the communications team talks about transformation. The junior intake that was supposed to become next year's middle management, that's already a corridor sealed from the other side. The white-collar apprenticeship, that whole architecture of upward mobility the UK bet its tax base on, that doesn't get announced as extinct. It just stops being replaced. Whilst the gilt market prices the official narrative, I believe the market is reading the position, not the press release. The markets always get it right, not the press, not the release. The UK's fiscal arithmetic, it rested on graduates becoming managers and paying higher taxes. And with enough bodies coming through each decade, we could fund the cohort ahead. However, AI is ending that first condition, and the birth rate is ending the second. Elon Musk has a recurring nightmare about this, and he's not wrong. The developed world's fertility rate is running around 1.5. That's well short of the 2.1. Forgive me, I hate decimal points, but it is what it is. Yeah, we need 2.1 to hold the population flat. Japan's already contracting. South Korea's close behind. And every developed pension system in the world, it was engineered for a demographic pyramid that just no longer exists. Designed in a world with something like 5 workers behind every retiree and now we're drifting towards only 2. And the serious rooms with the big policy thinkers, they've noticed. The seminal work, creating a framework, was Hamilton and Doherty. They were the first. They proposed federal trust accounts for every newborn child, a capital stake at the start of life rather than a safety net at the end of it. Trump scaled the politics, if not the ambition. $1,000 seed account for every child born in America between 2025 and 2028. The logic is correct. The number isn't. Take it seriously. Maybe it's $250,000 per birth, issued as a bond, a baby bond, with the currency, the dollar, backed against biological growth. The gold peg and the Bitcoin fix, maybe the Bitcoin less. But they fail at the same point. They fail, well, Bitcoin doesn't fail. Gold would fail at this point in trying to anchor an expanding political covenant to static collateral. A baby bond does something stranger. The collateral itself, it grows. Baby Woods, perhaps, not Bretton Woods. The collateral, it isn't gold, it's whoever shows up next. Maybe like that, we have enough people and we get to Mars after all. This is the Cobra program in a onesie. Once a child carries a bounty, the world reorganizes to produce children. The breeders, you and I mean, not me, I'm not having any more children, but, the breeders qualify immediately. And what you get is the demographics the incentive produces, rather than the demographics the policy intended. And you know what? They all vote. This is the Cobra program in a onesie. Because once a child carries a bounty, the world reorganizes to produce children. The breeders qualifying immediately. And what you get is the demographics that the incentive produces, rather than the demographics the policy intended. The baby bond is the rare Cobra program where the unintended consequence is the point. Sovereign debt requires future taxpayers, and future taxpayers require people. Get the demographic collateral growing again, and at least one piece of the arithmetic starts repairing itself. It doesn't solve the harder sovereign problem, which is what happens when the software can do most of the work that those future taxpayers were supposed to be paid for. The collateral, after all, is the people, and they vote. Good night, God bless. This was a very short acid capitalist little essay. I hope you've enjoyed it. God rest. God bless. God rest. Is there a God? I have to go to bed. Good night.